It's a children's picture book, so it's really meant for kids 2 through 6. It's a really simple rhyming book. It also has these characters in it that have no gender. The protagonists, I named them Bink. And also I created a monster world through my incredibly talented illustrator, Casey Fritz. I wanted to create a very inclusive world where through the characters, kids can, without even reading the words, they can look at the pictures, they get it. They get that it's okay to make a mistake. It's okay not to know how to do something. That's, well, it's okay to have an accident, like, you spill something or you drop something. What we're trying to do is encourage them to learn from that. So instead of berating themselves, they get curious. They start wondering, ooh, I don't know how to do this, but how can I? How can I find out? Instead of going, oh man, I can't do anything right. They start asking questions. Instead of judging themselves and limiting themselves because they don't know how to do something.
Welcome to the latest edition of Adeptus On-Air, and today we have a great guest in Brenda Do. Do is a children's author and a copywriter. So Brenda, thank you so much for joining the show.
Thanks for having me, James. I'm happy to be here and having a little chat with you. So let's get going.
Likewise. So first, tell us about your upbringing and how it eventually led you down the path of writing children's literature.
Oh, actually, that's a long, crazy journey. And there is actually no through line for this because don't have kids of my own, and I've never been able to relate to children. So me writing a children's book is way out there for me. Anybody who knows me was very, very surprised that I did it. So by trade, I'm a copywriter. I write direct response copy as well and content for a lot of tech. I tell people, because I ghostwrite, so I tell people a lot of times, you don't hear my voice. I always try to act like I'm a 60-year-old white man in the C-suite. So sadly, that's my voice. And then so pivoting from there to writing a children's book was more so just personally inspired. Because as a copywriter, you're always analyzing humanity and how people think. And you're wondering, why do they do what they do? Why do they react the way they do? What makes humans tick? So I love just observing people. And you take that all the time because you're trying to write in somebody else's voice and you're trying to guide their thought processes, especially if you're writing direct response copy, where the end goal is to have someone click something, open their wallet, do something, right? So when it came to writing a children's book, what happened was I was visiting my little nephew one time, and we were putting away the leftovers after dinner one night. And he had a plastic container in his hand full of food, and the lid wasn't closed tightly. So he accidentally dropped it. And when he did, food flew everywhere, all over the floor, the cabinet walls, everywhere. It was a mess. But the sad part was his first reaction was, oh man, I'm so stupid. And it just broke my heart. Because he's not the kind of kid whose parents always berate him and make him feel badly. So I was wondering, why did he have that reaction instead of just going, oh man, what a mess, or oops, and start cleaning it up. Instead, he felt that mistake was a sign of how he's really there's not enough in some way. And then so the copywriter in me starts thinking, wonder why he reacted that way. So I started to observe, I started to think back in my past. I started to dig deep into God, I'm having a mind block here. But it's Carol Dweck, and she was known for the growth mindset. She coined that term with her studies of children. So I started going into that kind of stuff because of the copywriter, we're big researchers as well. And then so that's what made me think, oh, I see what it is. It's a lot of well-meaning adults. We tend to give kids messages that inadvertently make them feel smaller or start closing down their world. We think we're encouraging them, and we're actually doing the opposite. So instead of having a growth mindset, they have a lot of self-judgment. They start closing down. They start feeling the not enoughness, and the world starts to shrink at a very young age. And I can go into later on how that affects, I think that affects you as an adult, especially in today's world where we're supposed to be expanding and always learning and, adapting fast and all that kind of stuff. So what happened was that must have planted a seed in the back of my head And one morning I just woke up and I could not write this book. So I just whipped it out. And most authors would probably hate to hear this, but I wrote it probably like in an hour, hour and a half, if I'm really generous. And then just to get it out, and just like type it on the keyboard, went for a walk, came back, and it just wouldn't leave my brain. So I edited it for maybe another hour. And then I decided, you know what? I think this is a message that people need to hear. I'm not saying anything new. I'm just saying it slightly differently, which is what copywriters do. So I went ahead and pitched the book out, found somebody who picked it up, and that's how I became an author of a children's book.
Wow, that is awesome. That's an awesome story. And you're talking about the title, It's Okay Not to Know, correct?
That's right.
And just elaborate on the subject matter. I mean, you told the origin story of it, but as far as the contents in the book, what can fans, readers look forward to as far as the contents in the book?
The content is super simple. It's a children's picture book, so it's really meant for kids 2 through 6, 2 through 7 maybe. And then so there are only like 200 words, and think of it as Dr. Seuss. I call it Dr. Seuss meets Brene Brown because it talks about vulnerability, self love, and all that kind of stuff. And so it's a really simple rhyming book, and it also has these characters in it that have no gender. The protagonists, I named them Bink. And also, I created a monster world through my incredibly talented illustrator, Casey Fritz. And then so what I did is I wanted to create a very inclusive world where through the characters, kids can, without even reading the words, they can look at the pictures, they get it. They get that it's okay to make a mistake. It's okay not to know how to do something. That's, well, it's okay to have an accident, like, you spill something or you drop something. All that's okay. Now, what we're trying to do is encourage them to learn from that. So instead of berating themselves, they get curious. They start wondering, ooh, I don't know how to do this, but how can I? How can I find out? Instead of going, oh man, I can't do anything right. Instead of doing that, they go, how can I? They start asking questions. Instead of judging themselves and limiting themselves because they don't know how to do something, they start to ask questions, expand, and make it playtime more than anything. And then by doing that, they're creating more compassion for themselves and they're creating more self-love. And then there's a page in the book where, because they're sharing that love from themselves, they're able to help others when they're in need. So they're spreading that compassion and the love of others instead of judging some other kid who can't do it right. One big thing about the book itself, the characters, are that I wanted to make this as inclusive as possible because I grew up in the US in the 70s with immigrant parents. So I didn't know how to speak English. And all the books, and still to this day, I don't see kids' books with characters that look like me. I mean, you probably had that same situation. It's getting a little bit better, but most kids are white, but the world's not all white, right? So
Right.
that's, and not all kids have both parents in the house, and not all kids have, parents of a different gender. So it's like, and not all kids have the same body parts and everything. So that's why I wanted to make sure that the book didn't have human children in it. Instead, it had characters that any kid could relate to. Even the name Bink, who is the protagonist, Bink, as far as I understand, is a sound that almost any child can make, no matter what their native language is.
Absolutely. No, that's a great message. And I know, something that you touched on in terms of, confidence and kids not being hard on themselves. I guess a big question for a lot of listeners here is, as parents, what can parents do to contribute to that positively, and kind of turn that around and make sure our kids are confident enough to express themselves in a positive way?
I think for me, the biggest one would be, as far as I know, I'm not a psychiatrist, or a therapist of any sort. But from my understanding, the biggest thing you can do, and just from personal experience, is to encourage effort instead of only awarding achievement. Because we put the A paper on the refrigerator, but we don't put the C. However, if the child worked as hard for that C, it deserves to be up there to me. right? We don't ask at the dinner table, "Ooh, what did you fail at today?" Instead, we're asking them, "Oh, hey, did you get that A on your spelling bee? Did you, beat your time at track? Did you make first chair in violin?" That's all, at least coming from an Asian background, that's all we ever heard, right? It was always, you had to be a top, you had to achieve. If that, then you're nothing. And then so I would love for parents, and I think I'm forgetting her name. I apologize. The founder of Spanx, her father did this at the dinner table a lot, where he would say, "Hey, what did you fail at today?" And they talk about failure not as a bad thing, but as a good thing. Of the, you expanded yourself, you tried something new, you reached out there, and what did you learn from that? Oh, that's interesting. Well, you didn't die from the mistake. So, hey, how can we improve that? How can we go out there again the next day and not be fearful of rejection? And then, she hustled to get her business up, and she still hustles now, in different, on a different level. So it's because there's no fear of expanding. It's not that we have to surround ourselves with, we can only do what we know, but no, it's more so, what do you want to know? How can you get out there? And that's how I feel parents should start encouraging kids to go past their limits, or what they think are their limits, and encourage them and then reward them for the effort of trying. Because the achievements will follow once the kid believes that they're the kind of kid that can achieve something. But as soon as you start labeling them like, "Oh, you're just not good in math," or even in Carol Dweck's study of the growth mindset, when kids were told, "You're smart," we think that's a positive thing. What ended up happening is it actually limited the children, because the kids who were told they're smart versus the kids who were told, "Ooh, you were really good at how you figured it out, or how you tried to figure it out, or your effort." The kids who thought they were smart, they only did things that they knew they can handle. So if a test question got too tough, they just skipped. If they didn't know how to do something, they pretended they didn't see it, or they lied about it. Whereas the kids who were told, "Wow, you're really good at trying. You're really good at trying to figure things out." They were the effort people. They answered the tough questions. They pushed themselves when they didn't answer something, and they figured it out. So in the end, they became the ones who were more, you would call successful, right? Versus the kids who were told they were smart. So that's the language that we need to be careful of, and the messages that we keep sharing with kids. And also, I mean, truth be told, adults need to hear this. So I was hoping that the book, in a way, is like a Trojan horse, where the adult reading it to the child is reminded of that message as well. Because we, especially in today's social media, drenched world, we're always judging ourselves, comparing ourselves to others, thinking of, well, I should be doing this, or I should be that. There's no I shoulds. It's, what do you want? What does it make your heart happy? And we don't go to our heart place too much. We're so busy in our brains thinking of what we have to do. And so when adults realize it's okay, you don't know how to do something, love yourself enough. If you want to really find out, but don't judge yourself during the process. Love yourself for wanting to find out. And don't judge others for where they are. Love themselves and to uplift them as well.
Exactly. Those are very, very wise words, and I think all parents, and children, deal with that to a certain degree. And then there's the adversity aspect and how you handle adversity in response to that. So that's all interesting things. And I want to add an extra layer to it. The school system. What can the school system change? What things the school system can change to kind of help kids in that respect.
That's a great question. I wish I had an answer. I'm not familiar enough to know how the school systems work nowadays, because, geez, I'm in my 50s, so it's been a while, and I haven't kept track. However, one thing I do appreciate now is a theme amongst all schools, well, grade schools, is social emotional learning, SEL. Have you heard that term?
Yes, I have. Yep.
Oh, cool. And then so this book is an SEL book. It teaches social emotional learning skills because it's teaching them how to overcome challenges, little kids. I love how the schools are more aware of that and they're welcoming those type of programs, those type of books, that type of information into their schools. Uh, what I would love is for them to do more of it because I think some people dabble. From what I've heard talking to librarians and teachers, it is like, of course, there's always a budget thing. They do try, they know it's part of their curriculum, but at the same time, they're just like, how do I? So, and I know I'm biased, but like one way would be to take some simple tools that are already made, such as this book, and just go, okay, this is reading time. How can we have a discussion around this? How can we practice this regularly?
Yeah, I agree. No, I agree with that. There, I mean, I know you said it's been a while since you've been in the school system. The same for me, but I think one of the biggest complaints that our society has is that the school system hasn't changed very much since we were kids, basically, and we're still teaching in 2025 the same way we taught in 1980. In a lot of ways, and kids change, society changes, and we have to make adjustments. I know personally, not to get off on too much of a tangent, but I would like them to teach taxes, and financial responsibility and how to invest in stocks and things that you need to know as an adult that they don't teach until you are an adult, and then you got to fail a few times, and why not teach that in high school or even middle school for those things, but yeah, I guess we all have our little angles and what can improve. I saw a recent quote from you that said we should think more with our hearts and feel more with our brains. Still trying to wrap my head around that one. So can you elaborate on that, please?
Yeah, I know. It's opposite of what we were taught. And I kind of did that on purpose. uh, it's because, a lot of people think okay, so my belief is your brain is there to protect you. And so it's going to rationalize everything as much as possible. But the way it rationalizes actually goes against what your soul believes. And so your soul is your heart. That's your communication center to me. And then so if you really like, a lot of people go, oh, I really don't want to do this, but I should. Or, well, I don't really like this job, but because of A, B, and C, this is why I should take it. So you can just feel the defeat in their energy when they're speaking. And then so what I mean by that phrase is you should think with your heart and feel with your brain is just really, instead of relying on the brain to rationalize what you're supposed to do, is go to your feeling place, your heart, get really quiet and just say, okay, what do I really want from this? And it will always tell you. Your heart will never lie. You might not want to admit it because what you're hearing is inconvenient. However, it is, to me, your truth. So anytime you're in a situation, really, and you're just kind of a little confused and you need a little clarity, just get quiet and go, okay, what feels good? The way I look at things is, it's like if someone invites me to go somewhere or do something, the way I look at it is if it's not a hell yeah, then it's a hell no. It's really black and white for me, really, really simple. And then so as far as when people are thinking with their brain too much, they convince themselves to do things they really don't want to, and then they're still dissatisfied. At some point, they're still feeling like they're selling themselves short. They don't know why they feel there's a void in their lives, at least as far as adults. So that's what I mean by that.
Well said. Well said. I have a much better understanding now, and thanks for breaking that down. I read it like 4 times and trying to like, "Man, how do I feel with my brain?
Well, thanks for actually
But
reading that. And then also to go back to your comment about financial literacy. I was a board member of Junior Achievement back in Nevada, and I also did a lot of volunteer teaching economics to children. And because I was an econ minor in college, and then so I love business and I love that whole idea of entrepreneurism. And if kids don't even know how to figure out like simple things like opportunity costs, I mean, kids at 5 years old, they understand that concept if you explain it to them well, right? Because it is just basic. So I totally agree with you. Financial
that's
literacy is
excellent.
emerging young, 5 years old up.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And what's next? What's next for you, Brenda? Do you have another future book in mind, or just is it more? just getting your book out there further, or what does the next year or two look like from your perspective?
The next year or two, getting my book out there further. I would love for corporations to understand that this is something you can actually buy 50,000 copies, give it to all of your employees, and just remind them it's okay not to know. Let's just figure it out. Especially like in tech, because I live in the Seattle, Washington area. So we're all about the whole fail fast culture. And you can't fail fast if in the back of your mind, you're still worried that you're going to get judged for failing. Even if the company supposedly creates a safe space for experiments and everything else, there is still that inner child in you that's pulling you back going, no, 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 you can't do that. They'll judge you. They're going to think you're, not enough somehow or other, not smart enough, not fast enough, not whatever enough. So that's why I feel that remind yourself, especially in today's world where there's a lot of confusion happening and a lot of unknowns, it's like, it's okay. Let's just take a breath and just take it one step at a time, and then we'll figure out our way to move forward.
Yeah, great point. And what are your social channels, Brenda, and where can people find the book, find your work online, find your other copywriting that you've done? Where can we find your work social?
Okay. You can find me on LinkedIn for the copywriting side. And then as far as the book itself, best place is to go on my website, brendado.com. Spelled D-O. Don't put an E on the end because I'm not a four-legged Bambi. And then the other thing is my social handles are out there on Facebook, Instagram, and Pinterest at official Brenda Do.
Brenda Do. Brenda, as always, thank you so much for joining Adeptus on Air and sharing your insight in the great book. And I encourage everyone out there listening to buy the book and share it. It's a great message for kids and for adults. They can kind of learn that message through kids. So thank you so much, Brenda, for joining Adeptus on Air.
Thank you. It was fun.
Thanks for listening to Adeptus on Air. If you like this episode, please subscribe and leave a review. The views and opinions by the podcast speakers and guests are solely their own and do not reflect the opinions of Adeptus. This podcast provides general information only and is not intended to constitute advice.